right. Hey, welcome to the Talkies. And we are gathered here today to talk about a classic film. In case you didn't notice, the cinemas are hard to access right now.
I haven't been able to get to them.
I haven't been able to get to the cinema
I can't
lately.
find them. They don't pick up the phones.
Yeah. Door was locked when I went today. Yeah. In fact, the marquee of the little theater here over at the Sunrise Mall, it just says "Stay home."
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I took a picture of it. I took a picture of it because it was a sad
sad thing.
Sad image. A movie theater marquee just says
Stay home.
Stay home. That's like
Welcome
the
to history.
nightmare of the cinephiles of like a decade ago when we were all talking about in the future there will be no theaters and everyone will stay home. If they showed up now, they'd be like, "It happened."
No.
Really, though, it did happen.
So what's the deal with African Queen? Because
it's the oldest movie we've covered, I believe.
You guys, I think Kenny, you were the one who suggested it, right?
Yeah, well, it's on the AFI Top 100 list.
Right, that's what it was.
It's just considered a classic of cinema.
I've never even heard of it.
Bit of an adventure tale.
Had you seen it before, Kenny?
Yes, I had.
Okay, I had not seen it. I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
Knew Humphrey Bogart was in it.
Yeah, Bogey.
John Huston.
Bogey. Man,
John Huston directed.
I really liked Bogey in this.
Yeah.
I thought he was awesome. I actually don't like his acting too much, but I thought he was great in this for some reason.
It's definitely a different role for him.
Yeah, because he's not suave or anything.
Yeah, he's very sort of crass and rough around the edges.
Yeah.
It's funny that this is based on a novel, and in the 50s and late 40s, it was a very popular novel. So audiences had expectations going into it. And Bogart's part in the novel and in the original screenplay was a South London Cockney guy, but he just couldn't do the accent. And so they literally changed the script and made him Canadian. They're like, well, we can't make you American because that has other connotations. You got to be in the British Empire still. So Canadian.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That is pretty funny. That's interesting.
It makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah. It was a very popular movie when it came out. It's the only movie that's not a Disney movie that has a ride at Disneyland loosely based on it. Because basically Walt Disney said, we should have a steamer through the African jungle like African Queen.
It totally, when I was watching it, I was just like, this is the ride.
Yeah. Unofficially based on this movie.
What'd you think of the movie?
Yeah, D, what'd you think about it?
Liked it.
Yeah, so you could get over all the oldness.
That's.
I know you struggle with that a little bit, D, sometimes.
That's what I get when I watch old movies. It's just like I have to just selectively, like consciously, suspend my disbelief, because with older movies it's harder to do. Because the acting's completely different, the culture is completely different.
Yep.
And I can just see all the camera.
The way they use music is very different.
So
music was like, so dramatic.
Right. Yeah. And it was kind of the same way I went into Indiana Jones, the first one.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to see. I'm just going to, suspend my disbelief. Whatever happens. And I loved it that way, but it makes it really hard to critique. So I didn't really have anything to say about it per se, but I liked it.
Yeah. What about you, Taylor?
I think I liked it. I had a hard time following some of it. Some of the language was tough because it's older. But I was following it for the most part, and I loved the Technicolor and on location stuff.
I love the Technicolor. The blending of the on location with the studio stuff was
a little tricky,
pretty jarring at times. That's one of those things you just forgive. You're like, wow, this was really advanced for its time.
Yeah, that came into my head a lot, and it does look really cool. Like the movie looks great.
Yeah.
But I just kept finding these little funny things that would happen. Like I thought it was funny how they did this like skinny dipping nude scene
With
in
underwear.
water. Yeah, and then they climb up onto the boat and it's like full all the way down to the ankle to
Yeah.
shoulders
Yeah.
is underwear because of
Right.
the
Right.
code and all that.
To a proper Methodist woman, that's as naked as you ever get.
Well, in the 50s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to do it
Yeah.
at all anyway.
Yeah.
That's why
I mean,
that's why they had to shoehorn in a marriage at the end before they got together. Because you
Try
had
to make it a little more appropriate.
You have to do that in the 50s.
Makeout scene on the boat was hilarious too when there's clearly staging, you know, when they're just like,
Yeah.
And then they cut away. Yeah.
right.
Like they show the beginning of a kiss and then fade to black. Yeah. I mean, and that's all it's the sensibilities of the time.
Yeah.
You know?
It's fun to watch it.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy picking that kind
Well, it's almost like going to like an opera today.
Yeah.
Right. It's like nothing in an opera is made for modern sensibility.
Right.
In fact, the whole concept of opera was made to fill sound in a giant amphitheater where there was no magnification of voices. Right. And so in practical terms, opera makes no sense, but we go and enjoy it for what it represents in time.
For its time. Kenny, when did you first see this?
When I was like 8.
Oh wow! This has been like since then.
It's probably. I think I showed it to Amber like shortly after we got married, but you know, my dad like inundated me with the movies he watched as a kid. So I saw a ton of classics when I was young. This one I always loved the leech scene and the stomping through the reeds. Like that whole sequence always like really freaked me out when I was a kid, and still had a good impact. It feels very claustrophobic and frustrating when they're stuck in there.
Yeah. I did like there were some parts that I just were very genuinely into. What the muck and the mud part was one of those.
Mm-hmm. They used real leeches, by the way.
Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was looking at those and I'm like, those got to be fake, right? But they were like shiny and they had the same exact shape that a real leech does. And I was like, so that was really good.
That part was shot in studio.
Yeah.
And they had a leech breeder, which is a thing, come in. And Bogart demanded rubber leeches because they made him so queasy. But Houston said, I want to see your genuine horror in your face after the leeches. So we're using real leeches.
So they put leeches on it?
Yeah, and his performance that he was really shuddering there at the end was genuine.
Real. It's funny because I thought that was overacted.
Yeah, that was him breaking character.
That's hilarious.
And this is one of those movies where like the production itself is almost more infamous than the movie.
I was gonna say,
because all that on location stuff there in Uganda and the Congo, places that were very, very hard to access.
Yeah, because that's like super novel for the time.
Yeah.
I was really
in the 50s, they were still in the wake of the fall of colonialism in Africa.
Wow.
Right? Like that was some of that stuff is fresh wounds still in that area, and there was still like guerrilla warfare and things going on all around them. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
What happened to her brother?
Well, it looked like he went crazy and died, but I think he's supposed to have had either a heart attack or malaria or something.
Oh, something like malaria would make more sense.
Yeah.
It looked like he went like he just went losing his consciousness from the heat. Yeah, and then just went nuts. And then she's like,
then just
he's dead.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Go with you.
Yeah, he lost his faith and he died.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a strange way to open a movie.
Dude, I
whole opening
love
sequence
that
is
scene.
crazy.
So all the Africans in there in this Christian church trying to
Howling.
sing.
Yeah.
This whole concept
That
of
was
him
very strange,
singing
yeah.
is just, yeah, that was nuts. And
She's just droning on and on.
so part of the lore of this movie is that Bogart and Houston are like famous alcoholics, like famous level alcoholic.
Mm.
And they claim that they never got sick on location while everyone else did because of how much alcohol they were drinking, right? And Hepburn was so outraged by the unprofessionalism of Bogart and Houston of being on the cusp of drunk half the time that she on principle would not drink any alcohol and just drank water. And because of that, got the worst dysentery of anyone on the production. And so in that opening scene, when everyone is singing hymns, she is puking in a bucket in between every take. There's like a barf bucket on the floor right by her piano there.
As needed.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And apparently she ran out to the outhouse to use it in a hurry, only to find that there was a black mamba in the outhouse. And so she in legendary form popped a squat just out in the open in front of everyone.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. That's how sick she was.
Also, the very, very end, they like float away, and then it's just like the end.
A lot of
love
old
that.
movies do
I was
that.
gonna say, yeah, old
Yeah.
movies, like as soon as the relevant plot is over, it's done.
Yeah,
It's done.
yeah.
No-
They
no
don't do a lot
epilogue,
of tying
nothing.
up,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it seems like there's pressure to do that in movies today, and I wonder how necessary it all is, because like I kind of thought that was sort of cool at the same
No.
time.
Yeah.
And wherever, I think if this were a modern movie, we would cut to them settling in the countryside of England and showing their kids they've had or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And a piece of the African queen would be over the mantle in
Right.
their house, you know.
Yeah. It's funny that it's weird I'm making this connection, but Born Identity has that really, really bad with the first one. It's like the crazy events happen and then everything's kind of tied up. Like you just end the movie and everything happened, you're like, you're done. And Jason leaves and people don't know where he is. And then they have this really weird wrap-up scene right after, which takes place like 2 years later. And it's just 5 minutes of him being with the girl on the countryside. It's just so weird. It's really, really strange. And I have noticed
don't
that in
need
most
that.
modern movies.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's forced in modern movie making.
Like it's an executive decision almost. Like we got to please the audiences, so make sure you write that in.
Well,
I think the equivalent of the wrap-up ending in African Queen is just the fact that they got married. Like that alone is enough. Like they lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, when
the way
they're in
I
the
see
water,
it.
they're bantering about how they're married.
Yeah.
Like they're not talking about like, geez, we almost died. There was an explosion. They're like, how you doing, Mrs.?
Yeah, I feel like
pretty good, Mister.
Like movies in the 50s and stuff, especially in the 50s, you know, like that the marriage to me just means happily ever after.
Yeah. That for a lot of movies of that era, that's the climax. That's the penultimate. You know, that's what leads to the solving of all problems.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where Get the Girl came from, right? That whole sensation.
Yeah. And then, but now people like the little more detailed.
There's a famous musical which became a famous movie in the 50s called Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Do you know this film? It would not play well on modern sentiment because it's essentially about seven brothers who go into town and kidnap women because they don't have any women in the mountains where they live, who they keep as prisoners, but then they fall in love with each other and get married. and live happily ever after. But
So
the movie,
kooky.
the movie literally ends with them like having a shotgun wedding, literally, where 7 and 7 they're getting married together all at once, and after they say I do, the credits roll. You know, it's like that's the end of the movie.
This is the ultimate conclusion we've all been waiting for.
Well, they're married, so now everything will be fine.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was funny to me, some of the visual effects stuff that I would have assumed was manageable at the time, but yet wasn't managed. Like one of the nitpicky things was some of the matte work where clearly they shot themselves in the boat on studio and were matting in a background, but they still wanted to use their really nice soft lens, right? So they have the two of them sharply in focus. The boiler is directly behind them and out of focus, but then the entire background is in focus.
That's weird.
Yeah, that happened a few times where I was like, I get that this was brand new technology and cutting edge, but at the same time, like, wouldn't it have made sense to blur that?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple discrepancy.
Is it? Maybe it wasn't a simple thing to fix back then. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
just throw it in a Premiere, dude.
And the swarm of flies. That was the other
so
bit.
Funny. That was like
it's like that's
it was like basic noise, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really funny.
It
was convincing though.
The acting was what sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Them falling down the waterfall reminded me of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
This seemed more realistic.
Yeah, maybe it did. Yeah.
It
did. There were a couple.
They had a virtual background going on.
Yeah.
They had a couple parts where they were falling, but they had big wide shots of the boat going, and it looked like they just had like dolls or something on the boat. Because I remember Humphrey Bogart being like this.
And it looked like a miniature boat as well, the way it was rocking around.
Yeah.
But again,
I laughed out loud during some of those parts.
I've complete forgiveness of all of it for a movie like this.
Yeah, I think my nitpicks are like my little critiques would be some of the writing connective tissue. I feel like for me, it was a little bit of a leap to for her husband to die and then her to go all in on like
that was her brother
her brother to die and then going all in on like modifying the African queen into being like a torpedo.
Yeah.
And like fighting in like this guerrilla warfare thing. And then them getting together at all. I was like,
yeah,
I get that that's just what you do in the 1950s.
I think that what they were suggesting was that she was a woman that had been extremely repressed, and that this was her first taste of adventure. And as soon as she had it, she was like, I want more.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The far-fetched part that got me was her and her brother finding out that World War II had started, or that war had started, and not knowing anything about it up to that point, and then like 5 minutes later, German troops are storming their campground. It's like, hey, a war started. Really? I didn't know anything about it. That's crazy. And here they come. They just come marching in. We're here.
Quick response time.
I was like, oh, that someone wrote in the script out to shoot, to cut out a bunch of scenes. Let's just smash it together.
Yeah.
War begins.
Yeah.
One of my favorite continuity errors of cinema is in this movie. And in fact, it's where I was taught what a continuity error is, because my dad told me about it.
That's funny. What is it?
He was like, do you see what happened there? That's called a continuity error. And I was like, what does that mean? And that's what I learned. When they're fighting about who should drive the torpedo boat out to crash, who should be the one to stay on the boat and go blow them up, they're having an argument, and they cut angles on Bogart while he's mid-sentence. So it feels like it's one take, but it actually is two. It's just cut flawlessly. The only problem is when they went from one take to another, he put a cigar in his mouth. So literally mid-word, a cigar appears in his mouth. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's that kind of stuff that I can't help but dismiss and forgive in older movies.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've seen a ton of continuity errors in older movies, and there was even a whole scene in here that felt like it was so just weirdly inserted or forgotten about and not deleted. Where it was when they shortly after or shortly before they discovered that they needed to weld the fan thing back on. They landed on land, and then they came over with buckets and started undoing the water in the boat. They could have deleted that whole scene or cut out that whole scene, and it would have actually made more sense, I feel like. And it was really strange because that scene started, it had too much air in the beginning, so it looked like the director said action, and they somehow cut out the audio of him saying action, because they were like sitting there like this, and they go, we should go over here and do this.
I noticed that too. That line of dialogue felt very much like go.
Right.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I had that same feeling.
Yeah, it was also shot differently. Like, I don't know if that was on location or not, but it
felt very stagey. That scene.
Exactly. It was very staged. So
but again, that's another piece of the culture that you see a lot in old movies is actors who are still acting as if on stage. This movie reminded me of the way Clint Eastwood, or not really popular Western guy. It's not John Wayne.
Yes, John Wayne. The way he talks is him, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Christopher Walken. How Christopher Walken is him. He's not really acting. It's just him, And I feel like Humphrey Bogart has that going along, which is why I liked him in this role, because it was a little less. But it seems like almost all acting between the 50s and 70s was that. It was like you have to be you as opposed to play the character. So now, instead of character actors, we have people who are either just normal citizens or stars of the shows, like Audrey Hepburn, and I forgot the other dude.
That's interesting. That actually holds water.
Yeah.
It's really strange to me.
Katharine Hepburn is
even
the same in every movie.
Right.
He really is.
Yeah. And so most of these movies have that, and then because of that, again, it's hard for me to critique it. I can't really.
Well, and when I think about the concept, that kind of actor is still around today, very much so. It's just it's a particular,
just different, right?
Form. But like that whole idea of the method actor.
Yeah.
Can you think of anyone from that era who would fit that category?
That's what I mean.
I don't think so. Like that seems to be a more modern phenomenon.
Right. Well, it's weird because I feel like that, because what we were just talking about has more of a play sensibility, right? Like you said, if you're really, really, really good at acting back then, people see you as a good actor because of the things that you do that's unique to you, and not necessarily good for the play or for the plot or for the character.
And that aspect, I think, was also highlighted too in the filmmaking done in that era.
Yeah.
Where the actors being a name brand is what got people to buy.
Well, that's true, right? Like Bogart and Hepburn and these people belonged to a studio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like the people that you can imitate are the people that were known back then.
You know what? An actor back then is what IP is today.
Yeah,
I was about to say that.
Yeah. They had
it's like Disney owning Marvel.
Yeah, it's a lot more personality driven.
Yeah,
like there is still some obviously star driven box office stuff today, but then it was the big thing was
it was the thing.
Who's in it? This is a Humphrey Bogart movie, Right.
That being said, Humphrey Bogart was more was more playing a part in this movie than he does in his others.
Yeah,
that's why
that's what kind of makes this movie a little unique too.
Yeah, that's why I like him in this movie, because it's a little different from what I've seen before.
Yeah, I love the opening titles.
Yeah,
I do too.
I love that.
I do too. Yeah.
And I miss movies having opening titles like a real
like full on credits,
robust credits in the beginning of the movie.
I hate that, dude.
I love them, and I love especially when they're like, well, let's think of a way of making it interesting.
Yeah, I like the this is so funny, but the typeface that they used, I think, is beautiful. I think typefaces from the 20s to the late 60s.
The whole movie was really gorgeous. I love the Technicolor look.
Technicolor has such a cool look. There's it's funny. This is Technicolor with Kodak. Like when you're shooting on the film, is that Kodak film that you're shooting with?
Well, Technicolor itself was developed in partnership with the Kodak company.
With Kodak, so Technicolor is like basically like the science behind what they used for Kodak.
It's a kind of film and a kind of camera.
A lot of the times. I don't remember when exactly it happened, but I do remember that when color started out with Technicolor, that it was really tough to shoot dark-skinned people. anyway, yeah. So Technicolor looks pretty cool, except for black people.
Dude, that's racist.
It actually works pretty because they were supposed to be really dark-skinned.
Well,
black people.
There were a lot of issues with that kind of thing as color was introduced.
Like racism.
No, not racism.
No. In the 50s?
Not racism in the 50s.
It kind of played a part because to develop the color science, you needed skin tone, and they didn't use colored people.
Yes. I'm trying to make a separate point in that.
I'm trying to talk about racism.
I'm not talking about racism. I'm saying that of the whole multiplicity of colors were introduced into the palette very gradually. Like say in the Kodachrome process, you only had like 8 different variants of each color that actually would show up in the end. And so you had this very interesting look that is cool and retro today, but it's because there's several million colors that are missing.
Right.
It just couldn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why.
And they were racist.
It's one of the reasons why filmmakers today can look at something and be like, oh, that's shot with a black magic, because you can instantly see the different kinds of colors.
You can just see the racism.
You can see
see the racism.
Yeah. Midsummer fact. Ready? Boom. Ari Aster said he wanted Midsummer to have the Technicolor look, but he didn't want to use references from Technicolor and instead opted to recreate Technicolor how he imagined it looked when he was.
I like that.
Yeah. I can kind of see it. I can kind of see it.
Like a little, like it becomes its own thing, totally. But
I like the skin tones in that movie a lot.
I want to make a movie with a really dramatic score.
Yeah, like a huge orchestra.
I can't help but laugh every time I hear like really dramatic scores.
What's interesting is like the music. The dramatic music comes in before the dramatic visual.
Yeah.
Like it warns you. Like it's like, get on the edge of your seat. Here comes something, instead of responding to what's on the screen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It does do that.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a shot that they had. I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was some dramatic music when Humphrey Bogart's character saw something or realized something, and I can't remember what it was.
Well, it could have been the other ship.
No, it wasn't even
rapids.
That. It like wasn't that interesting. It was like he somehow, I don't know. He was kicked out of the room when he went into Rosie's room or something like that. I don't remember exactly. It was so funny because it was so small, but the dramatic music was so big, and I'm like, something happened on screen. I don't get it. What's happening?
Yeah, or the first time she saw him drinking gin.
That's what it was.
There was like a major action music sting.
Yeah, because he just poured something and started drinking, and then it close up on her face, and she's like, and then like, I'm like,
it's like, oh, was it poisoned?
Right, that's what I was thinking. I was like, is he gonna die?
Yeah,
that's really funny.
But this ties into a conversation we've had a lot of times about context and interpreting a movie, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you think about it, what we're basically saying here is that the overall enjoyment of this movie relies heavily on the context that comes with it.
Yeah. It was made
right?
for the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah. In that respect, that's
made
kind of
for
the
its
reason why
time.
I enjoyed it, was because I was disconnected from it, and I
Right.
I
But
really liked it.
whenever the AFI Top 100 list is updated, there's all these old iconic movies that always keep making the list, and that is because they're including their context for how it was made and when it was made.
And the influence of the film too.
It's I mean, because if it were completely objective and comparing something with the visual technology of that time with this time, right, you'd have a whole nother. You'd have a different list.
Right. That's the whole reason why remakes don't work as movies, is why they don't have the same cultural impact as the originals did. Like what was that Korean movie that Spike
Old Boy
redid? Yeah, that was a terrible remake, but not just because it was terrible, because obviously they had really good production. It's because it didn't have the same cultural impact.
Yeah,
it just fell upon deaf ears, basically.
Yeah, it's like if they made a Citizen Kane remake. Like,
when is a remake more iconic? The Thing.
Is what now?
The Thing.
What's the
is
thing?
a time that
The Thing.
a remake was more iconic.
Than the original.
Yeah.
Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur's one of them.
Original Ben-Hur.
The Ben-Hur that is famous is a remake. Yes. So a lot of remakes are not. Very few remakes.
Culturally relevant.
Yeah.
It's like Godzilla. That's one that I've heard a lot whenever someone talks about cultural impact with movies. How Godzilla was centered around fear of nuclear strikes.
Yeah.
But I mean, even though it's still a fear that exists, it's certainly not the cultural, thing now. So
right.
So a remake doesn't hold as much water.
It doesn't have the same original subtext.
Right. See, that's kind of the reason why I love movies like 12 Angry Men and Rear Window. Those are two movies that come to mind, because they deal with the psychology of a human as opposed to the cultural.
Yeah, I was going to say Rear Window is just as good, I feel like, now than when it came out.
Yeah, because you're right. Because it has to do with something that's very foundational that doesn't change.
Right, right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's context that
everyone
remains
has
true to all humans.
Yeah,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of had that voyeuristic impulse that Rear Window has.
Yeah, so if the driving motivation, the movement factor of your movie is fear or anxiety or loss, it'll stay more relevant.
Yeah, where then I think maybe that's why I feel a little weird about African Queen is I did like it, but I can tell it was a movie made to just pretty much first to entertain. It's an adventure movie made to entertain audiences at the time.
Yeah. I like the kind
of a Marvel movie for then,
Yeah.
I like the transformative role of Rosie's character, though, and that might have been more of the novel rather than the movie script.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Sorry, go ahead. No.
I was just going to say I've always liked Rosie, especially for the times in which Charlie says, "Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that," and she's like, "Well, why don't we just try?"
Right.
Yeah.
It's we can't do that. We would have to have a shop and weld it and everything. And she's like, "Okay, weld it."
Yeah, right.
I've always loved that. I think that's awesome.
Me too.
Strong female lead.
Maybe that's why this is such an important movie, and
that's why Taylor doesn't like it.
Yeah, strong female lead. Don't like that.
I know you have issues with women.
Issues.
Yeah, I get it. Well,
issues
I totally get it. Dude, I get that. Yeah.
AFI Top 100 because though it is a movie just to entertain, which is fine, and it's a blockbuster, but it also has the innovative Technicolor and on-location stuff. The scope is crazy.
Yeah.
And the character has more depth than the average adventure movie from the time, I'd imagine.
No doubt.
Something I would add to that is something like if something like that were to happen now, one of these modern films were to be added to a list like that, I think Avatar would be one of them that you would add to it because of the technical freaking amazingness that it is.
Yeah.
Just the
until, 50 years from now when it doesn't matter anymore. And you're like, okay, well, clearly there's not much of a story there. And what they're doing is a lot of old stuff, in 2070, 2080. You're looking back and it's not impressive anymore,
I will definitely look back and think that in 2080.
Yes, when you're 110.
No, I'll be 98.
You'll be 98.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Coronavirus doesn't get you first.
Yeah. Corona.
It's coronavirus.
Oh shit! There it is.
Taylor, no!
Down.
Your screen goes black. Yeah.
Yep. Pizza time.
Pizza time. Leech pizza.
This is a really, 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 really old pizza. Super old. Mummified.
Oh, dude, no, this is just a nice cheese and pepperoni pizza after the Little League baseball game. That's what it is.
It's the context that matters there.
Maybe with Capri Suns.
Yeah, dude, I'm feeling that.
Yep.
That's basically the same rating for me, man. Pepperoni pizza, simple pepperoni pizza, maybe after a fun little event.
It almost doesn't matter where it came from.
Yeah, that's
right?
not even the point. It's just like,
it's like your team just won, you're all hanging out and happy, kind of dirty, you just had a great game, and then someone cracks open the Capri Suns and you're like, this is heaven.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I just get all right. We have never been so unified.
Perfect.
All right. Well, tune in next week for our next episode of Talkies, where we will cover
cliffhanger.
You'll just have to find out then.
We'll have to find out then.
Yeah. Well,
we don't know.
Bye.